back to my channel Elucidate. And guys, today we are going to understand a very important topic, which is TestNG, right? So there are two aspects of this particular lecture. What is TestNG, and the other aspect is why do we even need to use this TestNG, right? And why it got created and why we normally use it. Okay, so there are various reasons, and the way I have monitored this lecture, or the way I will be going about onto this particular lecture, is that guys, we'll be covering each and every topic. I mean, whatever is written over here, we'll try to cover everything. Okay, so it won't be just reading the definition. I'll be demoing you, or you can say that I'll be making the concepts a bit more clear to you guys. Okay, so without wasting time, let's get back to our lecture. Okay, so guys, first of all, we need to understand what is test engine. Okay, so all those guys who are basically involved in manual testing, or they are involved in some automation kind of stuff, I think most of the people have been making use of this test engine, uh, but a framework. Okay, so in order to use test engine, first of all, we need to understand what is test engine and what is its full form, who created it, right? So these are some basic questions that everybody should be able to understand. Okay, but why I have created this lecture, some people say that it's an easy topic, some say it's a tough topic, but there is a reason why I have created this particular lecture. So I'll just quickly open my notepad and ask you some questions, right? So what would you answer if I ask you what is test engine, right? What would happen if I ask you another question, that how many languages are being supported by test engine, right? So, and there is, well, let's say if I talk about some another query, is that what is the difference between a library and a framework, right? What are annotations? So guys, if somebody asks you what is TestNG, what I have seen that in multiple number of interviews, uh, recently I was just having an interview with one of the 2 3 years experienced guys in an automation using Java Selenium, and we just asked what is TestNG, and that guy immediately replied it is a unit testing framework. Okay. Second question, we asked that how many languages is supported by TestNG. He said Java for sure, but maybe Python. Right. So maybe Python. I said, what about .NET? What about Ruby on Rails? He said, yes, maybe Ruby on Rails as well. So this is the second answer which we got right. And the third thing which we asked, see, we never ask, or what, when I take any sort of interview, I never try to ask a very technical questions, very tough. I do not start immediately start asking about, give me an example or write the code of data provider. First, you should be having the idea what test engine is all about. So the third question, what we asked, our team asked, that what is the difference between just a library and a framework? So he said that library is a set of code, and framework is, and in framework I think he got confused. So no answer was given over here, right? And the fourth thing which I asked, that what are annotations? Multiple times he said that in TestNG annotations we make use of TestNG annotations like before suite, after suite, before test, after test. So I said, what are annotations? Can you just give me an example in Java normal? So he's just said that they are tags. Apart from that, he had no knowledge, totally blank over here. So those who think that it is a very easy kind of topic, or mid-level or high-level topic, so nothing is easy, nothing is difficult. The only thing is that at some point of time we do not have that level of knowledge, or we do not try to go a little bit deeper. This is the reason what happens in interview when somebody starts grilling you. You come up with these kinds of answers. You say that maybe, and you are totally off grid, right? So the first thing is that what is TestNG? It is not a unit testing framework. It is totally wrong, guys. It is not an exact unit testing framework. Why? I'll tell you. So how many languages are being supported by TestNG? Only Java. That's right. This is the answer. What is the difference between a library and a framework? I'll discuss in quite detail in this lecture. And what are tags and what are annotations? Oh, I know this is a tag. It's good. This they are tags, but they provide some sort of metadata. They provide metadata. What is metadata? Data about data. These are the very very small things that you should know when you are going for an interview, or even if you are not going for an interview, if you are you're trying to interact with your colleague who is having lesser number of experience. I think basic things, I think you should be having basic idea of all these things, right? Because somebody asks that, sir, please tell me, is it supported by Python? You will say, I have to Google out. So these are the things that you should be keeping in your mind, and they are very handy kind of stuff, right? So without wasting any more time, I know guys your time is very very important, so I won't just keep telling the stories. Let's get back to into our lecture. Okay, so first starting with the definition. So what is a test ng, guys? So there are two words which I have highlighted in red. Why I have highlighted in red, I'll explain later on. But just for this time being, test ng. Test ng was first developed by this guy. His name is Cedric, right? So Mr. Cedric developed test ng, right? And why he developed test ng will come up. So test ng is a Java testing framework. What is a testing frame kind of testing framework? It is a Java testing framework, right? It is not a Python testing framework. For Python testing framework, you can Google it out. There is another kind of stuff, right? But TestNG is a testing framework. It is not only a unit testing framework, right? It is a testing framework which has the capability to perform unit testing, functional end-to-end integration, etc. And number of types of tests can be performed with the help of TestNG, right? It covers all categories. So TestNG is a Java testing framework, and it has been inspired from JUnit and NUnit. Most of the people do not even know the meaning of these 4 5 words, inspired from JUnit and NUnit. They think that it is totally JUnit. All the codes of JUnit will run over here. All the codes of NUnit will run in TestNG. It is not so, guys. It has taken inspiration. This guy, while developing TestNG, the full form is Test Next Generation. He was facing some sort of issues. He wanted to do something, but he was not able to do that. So he just took some help, or you can say that he just took some inspiration from JUnit. What is JUnit? JUnit is a testing framework. JUnit, please note it down, guys, if you are noting somewhere. It is a testing framework, right? And what is NUnit? It is also a testing framework. So what is the difference between them? The difference between JUnit and NUnit is that it is for .NET language and it is for Java. Okay, so this was the very basic definition of TestNG. Again, I'll reiterate so that it gets embedded onto your mind. So TestNG, that is Test Next Generation, was developed by Mr. Cedric, and it is a Java testing framework. It is a testing framework. It is not a library. It is a framework, and it has taken inspiration from JUnit and NUnit, right? But since it is a newly developed feature or newly developed kind of stuff, it would be having some more additional features like annotations. So while doing some sort of using JUnit, this guy might have faced some issues, right? He wanted to run some things in form of parallel execution. Let's say if you have 5 test cases, right? Let's say if you have 5 test cases, and each test cases is taking 1 minute, right? In order to execute them serially, it will take at least 5 minutes of time, guys, right? Let's say similarly, in case you have 50 minutes, so 1 minute each will take somewhere around 50 minutes. So what he wanted to do, that he wanted to run some test cases in parallel, right? So if a parallel execution is done, it will be hardly done within a minute or a 2 minute or a 3 minute of time it will take hardly, right? So, but this was not available over here in JUnit. Like there were some annotations like at before class, at before, at test, at after class. So he added some more annotations over there. like before suite, after suite, data provider, factory, listeners, parameters. So what is a data provider, guys? In my previous lecture, where I said that if you want to become an expert in Excel reading, just you can have a look onto my lecture for Java series. I have very deeply told you how to make use of this add data provider, right? This is an annotation. It provides some data about a data, right? So I have already explained that thing over here, but at this point of time, I want this lecture to be a little bit shorter. So at this point of time, only thing you can keep in your mind that some added features were present in TestNG. He added some more features, right? So over here it is written as well, introducing some new functionalities that make it even more powerful and easier to use, right? Such as annotations, multiple annotations, and they have their own functionality. What they are, we will do each and every one in detail, and that too on a demo basis, demo by demo basis, not theoretical, right? But this topic is meant a bit theoretical, because in an interview, if these kinds of answer you give, it is a unit testing framework, it would be wrong. If you say that it is supported by multiple languages, it is again wrong. If you don't know difference between a library and a framework, then what the hell you have been making use of TestNG framework, right? And what are annotations? You cannot say that they are only tags. You need to have, or you can give certain examples. I'll give you an example. I've already jotted down an example. I'll let you know, guys, right? So what is TestNG? It is a Java testing framework. It has taken inspiration, or you can say Cedric took an inspiration from JUnit and NUnit. NUnit is a .NET testing framework. JUnit is a Java testing framework, and he introduced some new functionalities, right, in the form of annotations, running tests parallelly, like support for parameters. And what are the parameters? Like if you want to run multiple Chrome browsers, like if you want to instantiate 5 Chrome browsers at the same time running some code, so you can make use of these parameters. Will come up later on, will really come up later on, right? So all these added functionalities are present in TestNG. It is a testing framework. And what is a framework? Before going downwards, guys, first try to understand what framework is all about. Okay, or either allow me to complete this particular slide. So some added functionalities. He in JUnit there were some annotations with which he was not able to do all the things which he required to do. So a test next generation, he just introduced this a new entire testing framework, and some new features were added. There are many more. You can go over onto the documentation part and we can check that later on. Okay, so this was all about the definition and why it came into existence, because some additional features were required to be done or to be handled, because in case of 5-10 test cases, everything looks very easy. But when it comes to 300, 400, 500 test cases, 700 test cases, and you have to automate all those test cases, guys, TestNG becomes very powerful framework. I have personally used it, and those who have already used it uh, would agree with me, right? So, guys, in the start of lecture, I told you that these are the 4 questions, and answers of 2 I have already given you. So now let's get back to this third question: that what is difference between a library and a framework? I have seen many of these Java developers itself. I mean, not everyone, very few, and even some testers as well. What they have been doing is that sometimes they say that TestNG is a testing framework, or while doing making a configuration in an Eclipse, we just added TestNG jar files or TestNG library. So they are using this term framework and library interchangeably, without knowing the fact that both of them are totally separate things, right? Framework is a totally different thing, and library is a different thing. They are not the same thing, otherwise there would have been only one word, either library or framework. We are not saying that TestNG is a Java testing library, right? So what is the difference between library and what is the difference between a framework? First try to understand that particular thing, then this definition will get stuck onto your mind, right? We'll be able to understand it with the help of this simple example. I just jotted it down a couple of minutes back. So, guys, what is a library? Library are nothing but they are simply set of codes written by anyone. I mean, I can create a particular library. You yourself can create a particular library. So what is a library? They are set of code, right? So what those set of codes can be, they can be any set of code. If you are working for a Java application, you can create your own Java library. You can provide the support in the form of library, right? So in order to understand the exact difference, let's first try to understand it with the help of a totally non-technical kind of example. Let's say somebody has given me a particular piece of land, or let's say I have given you guys a particular piece of land. This is a piece of land I've given you, right? And I want, my requirement is totally simple. I just want you to prepare a house, and in that particular house there has to be two bedrooms, there has to be two washrooms, one dining area, and two balconies, right? So let's say somebody gave me this thing, this requirement, and gave me this particular piece of land, right? So first, understanding it in totally non-technically without help of any software. Let's say I have to build a house, right? So what I did, that I built first room over here, second room over here, washroom I attached right side, because I was using my own mind. Nobody gave me any structure that you have to use it into this particular fashion. Totally a piece of land was given to me, and it was totally depending upon my will how to make use of this particular land, or how to build a house, or how to meet all these requirements, right? So what I did is that I prepared one room over here, another bedroom over here. I prepared a common dining hall over here. I, depending upon my will, I started scratching the balcony from this area to entire this area for this room, and balcony for this room starting from here to here, right? This is the balcony, this is the washroom over here, this is the washroom over here, this is the dining table, and two bedrooms, right? So I have satisfied all the requirements. Okay, I hope I have made some sense. Only try to understand, guys, what I am telling you at this point of time. Okay, so somebody gave me this requirement and I did it on my own. I didn't. Nobody told me that this should happen, but only this requirement was given, and I have successfully met this requirement. Right. Let's take example of another scenario. Let's say there is a particular contractor kind of entity, or a person who normally builds a particular buildings or apartments. He gave me this particular piece of land in the second scenario, and he said that I want this thing to be built, but I am giving you a particular framework kind of stuff, right? Framework is, you can say that it is a kind of skeletal kind of system. It just provides you a outer skeleton, all the things you have to fill in as per the skeleton provided. This is very important. As per the skeleton provided, you have to fill in all the details, right? So what happens when a framework is being given to you? Let's say there is a contractor, he came to me, he gave me a framework, that this is the framework of a house which I want, and now you have to prepare it into this particular fashion. Let's say, just assume it. So what I did is that I had to install two washrooms. Let's say this is washroom 1, this is washroom 2, this is bedroom 1, this is bedroom 2, this has to be a dining area. So this is a dining area. Let's say there are two balconies. Just suppose, imagine that this is balcony 1, this is balcony 2, from which you can take a view of the outer environment or outer nature, right? So once a framework was given to me, whatever I did was according to the framework. If this place was allocated for the washroom, I had to make it a washroom, right? If this place was allocated as a bedroom, I had to make it in the form of a bedroom. I cannot make it washroom upstairs and bedroom downstairs. If this is a balcony, outer balcony, or this is the outer balcony, they have to be there in that particular fashion. So framework is like a skeleton, like our skeleton system. You cannot make, if our skeleton system has two hands, you have to provide some muscles or build a body around that in the form of gel or whatever in the form of the skeleton provided. You cannot make an elephant out of human skeleton, right? Over here, everything was dependent upon my will, and but over here the things are very much pretty structured. This is what normally is followed, right? So this was a non-technical example with help you understand that if you have to build something, you can do either on your own, and but if you have been given a particular framework by someone that it has to be built into this particular fashion, so you have to build it into this fashion itself, right? So all these requirements will be met or will be set in this fashion. So this was just an example, right? And now try to understand the difference between a library and a framework in terms of an IT industry, right? So let's say this is a washroom. Uh, I wrote some code for a washroom, right? Let's say this was a method I declared in Java. Washroom contains mirror and brush. Then there is a code for a bedroom. There is a code for dining area. Then code for a balcony. And I am developing a web application, right? Let's say I'm developing a web application for building a house, right? So what that web application would do, that these are certain set of codes that have already been written either by my peers or my seniors or the person who just, let's say, resigned, who was working on to me this particular project. He wrote this piece of code, right? And these piece of codes I can use it depending upon my own will. Let's say if somebody gave me that I'm gonna just build this particular application, house application, in which there has to be a washroom, bedroom, dining and balcony. I will use this set of codes, and these set of codes are known as libraries. These are predefined codes, or you can term them in the form of libraries, right? I can use them depending upon my will, how I want to use it, right? But if I'm making use of some certain framework like Django or MVC kind of framework or any other framework which you can think at this point of time, then certain rules are to be followed in a framework, right? And in framework, what happens, your framework will control the entire flow. Over here, when you are developing a web application, you are using libraries on your own. Let's say when you start using when you install in Eclipse, or when you configure some Selenium files, you use those libraries, Selenium libraries, depending upon your will, right? But when it comes to a particular framework, then that framework will use your source code, and your source code is now going to call your libraries. This is very, very important, guys. Although by definition framework is also a set of libraries and libraries are set of code, but there is a basic difference in the usage of libraries and a framework, right? Your code can use libraries at any point of time, anywhere, at n number of times, right? But over here in your, let's say if you are building a washroom web page, let's say for example, you can use bedroom libraries over here. You can also use dining area library over here. But if it has to work, or it has to be settled under a particular framework, then your framework will call your source code, and your source code is gonna call your all your libraries, right? So everything would be in a totally structured manner, and the entire flow is controlled by your framework. In framework, in if this is a washroom, you cannot call this bedroom function over here, let's say, right? So this is the difference between a library and a framework. And what happened when we asked that particular guy or any other person who goes or tries to go for an interview, if somebody asks you, why are you not using TestNG? I have seen in very big organizations, I won't take the name, but they have literally asked me, even to me, when I was giving one of the interviews, they said that, why are you not using a TestNG, libraries? So I said that, sir, first of all, TestNG is not a core a library kind of stuff. It is a testing framework, drawn inspiration from JUnit and MUnit, right? Similarly, again, the second question that was asked to me, that, why are you not using, why do you, how do you configure a Selenium, right? So how to install Selenium? I mean, the question was like, how to install Selenium? What is Selenium? So so the answer of this question was also, if you do not have the basic idea, you will say that we will simply install Selenium by going to the Selenium site, and we will copy the code, download it somewhere, and in the Eclipse we will try to run it XYZ. You will try to say that, but Selenium, what is Selenium? Selenium is a set of APIs, right? In which certain codes are written. So you cannot install Selenium. You can only configure Selenium. This is very important, guys. So these are small things we will cover, because I have now started this thing. I have already stopped my Docker lectures, and I have also stopped my Ansible lectures, guys, because this thing needs a little bit of more care, and people are waiting for this in my organization as well, right? So These are the small things which you guys need to take care of whenever you are going to give a particular sort of interview. And please do not say that annotations are, are just tags. They are not just tags. They do provide some information. And what kind of information they do provide, I'll to tell you with the help of this particular example. I have already made it. I have just to demo to you guys. Allow it to open. I'll quickly demo to you guys without wasting your time. Okay. Yes. So guys, let's say this is a particular class name is New York, and there is one function void public void go to New York, and we have just done a particular SOPL. I am in New York, right? There is another class Sydney, and it is extending New York, right? And there is the same function go to New York SOPL. I am in Sydney, and now I am creating an object of this particular class, and I'm just calling it, right? So what will happen? What should be the output over here at this point of time? Okay, let's run it. The output is I am Sydney. Sorry, I am in Sydney. Okay. So what is happening over here, guys? What is happening over here? Why not I am in New York came over here? Why? Can anybody tell me? Okay. Okay. So allow me to explain it, guys. Okay. So guys, over here we can clearly see that this particular method has been overridden, right? The method has been overridden. I have created an object of this class. It is also containing the same method. And when I'm calling it with the validating object of this particular class, this method is totally overridden. If I create it onto this particular fashion, let's say New York, NY equals New Sydney. See, the reference variable which I used of this particular class, but if whenever I create an object of this class, uh, and I use this method, I call this particular method, this is the output, right? So this is the clear cut case of method overriding. But guys, what happens sometimes we have to deliberately override a method. Let's say developer A created this particular function go to New York, which means that if a person accesses this particular method, he is in New York, right? But let's say I am the second developer and I have to override this particular method, right? But while trying to override this particular method, let's say instead of small k, I wrote capital K. Everything is the same over here, right? Everything is the same. And I thought that I have overridden this method because method is having the same name over here. If the only difference is of small k and capital K, I thought that this time when I will create an object of this class, output would be I am in Sydney. But if I run it, it is says that I am in New York, and now I am totally flabbergasted at this point of time. This is totally 10-15 lines of code. It's easy to guys rectify, but please try to understand when a developer debugs, it is very painful. Or an automation tester, when the lines of codes are totally reaching somewhere around 350, 450, 750, and there are 12 different methods with the same name, and you are like, currently I've told you that I have used capital K, so you guys are totally clear. But sometimes what happens, even if I am writing the code, sometimes it happens I am thinking that this that I have overridden this method, but output is coming I am in New York. Everything is the same. By looking also it looks totally the same, right? But it will take a number of hours for me to debug. If it is have been it would have been a 2000 or 3000 lines of code. So in such cases, we make use of some annotations like at override. So if I use this annotation, it will immediately start blinking and it will stop me and it will say that method go to New York of type Sydney must override. So since the error has started popping up, I will be able be to be notified. I will be notified by the intelligence that something is fishy over here. And now after comparing, I find that it is capital K because I was working late night, so I did some mistake. Instead of capital K, it should be small k, and it totally says that this method is being overridden or this overrides it, right? So now if I create an object of this class, it is totally overridden. So these are the annotations. What are they? Are not just tags. I know they are tags, you can say that, but they are also providing some metadata. They are providing some information. What kind of information they are providing? That, see, you can, that method declaration intend to override a method declaration and super type. If a method is annotated with this annotation type, compilers are required to generate an error message unless at least one of the following conditions hold. So it is providing me a lot of information. It is providing me data about data. So that kind of stuff you can visualize or you can try to understand, right? So it was a simple code, and with that, if there was no override method over here, if I do it control X, and if I do it again a capital K, it will take me again 5 days or 10 days in order to just rectify the small thing, right? But if I put at override over here immediately, this is the benefit of what you can say of annotations. So this is kind of example you can give, or you can tell. This is a very small example, and if you tell in front of interviewer, that interviewer will also get, um, will value your knowledge or will recognize you, that yes, this guy told me something. But if you say that they are just tags, so they are not tags, they provide some metadata, like data about data. What is the difference between a library and a framework? Yes, library are set of code, and framework or is also a set of libraries, but the way they have been used, or the usage totally segregates the difference. Like framework, there are a number of rules that have to be followed within a framework. You cannot say that this has to be a washroom, now this will be a balcony. So no, if this is the framework, everything would be done according to this particular framework. Your framework gonna call your source code, and your source code is going to call your libraries. But if it would have been this particular scenario, then libraries you could have called it depending upon your own way, right? There are no rules over here. You can call, I think, not I think, I believe you can call this bedroom code over here as well. You can call dining code over here as well. But in case of framework, things are quite strict, and those strictness or those set of rules need to be followed, right? So with the help of these small examples, you can tell your interviewer that this is what library and framework is all about, this is what TestNG is all about. So now, why I highlighted it as a red, I think I should now highlight it with green, because I hope you guys have got the answers, that why it is a framework, right? You cannot call anything at any point of time. So you can just imagine, oh, if you want that some more information I need to give, just let me know in the comment section. I'll again make a totally different video on how to distinguish, or how to segregate, I mean, between a framework or a library. I can give you actually demo, because but since this lecture is totally limited, guys, to this what is test ng definition, so I won't be making it very long, although it has taken a lot of time, right? So guys, I pray to God that all of you are safe, healthy, and please try to be safe onto these particular times, and please make sure that, guys, your concept is clear while going or preparing for an interview. And thank you everyone for listening me, and thank you for your time, and thank you for your patience, guys. I hope you guys would have liked the lecture, and guys, if you have liked my lecture, please like and subscribe. It will really help me, not to some extent, but to very much extent, right? So thank you everyone, thanks a lot.